Welcome, everyone, to Season 2 of Malevolent Autopsy. I'm your host, Queen. Use she, her pronouns. And before we go any further than that, let me warn you, this show contains major spoilers for everything in Malevolent as of the date this episode is published. We're going to dissect the patron votes that drive the story week to week. Grab your scalpel and let's begin the autopsy. Thank you so much for joining me as my co-host again, Vol. I really appreciate it. Would you like to tell me your pronouns and what you like to go by and what part of Arthur's body you control tonight?
Hello, I'm Vol Control. I use he, him pronouns. And tonight I am controlling Arthur Lester's median cubital vein.
My God, you're just going to keep coming at me with like increasingly more complex and small parts of the body. What is that?
That is the vein that is usually used to give blood when you give a blood donation, and presumably to receive blood when you get a blood transfusion. I donated blood yesterday, and so I was hoping that I could control Arthur's veins in case he needs a blood transfusion.
That's beautiful. I love that. I wonder if there's people with headcanons about what blood type Arthur is with the amount of blood that has been spilled in this show.
I can tell you right now, he's probably O negative.
Why do you say that?
Because O negative is the only blood type that can only receive O negative blood.
He's got to be a problem.
Yeah. He's always got to be a problem.
I love that. That's fantastic. Would you like to read us a beautiful episode summary that you have lovingly crafted this week?
I would love to. Hoo boy howdy. This was a meaty chapter. Arthur refuses to give Mother Darkness the talisman. The damage is already done, and giving it back won't make her want to kill him any less. She gets big mad, rants some more, and then poofs. Arthur manages to get on his horse on the first try, good job Arthur, and brushes off any questions from the party about his little chat. He falls back to bring up the rear of the caravan so he can speak with Yorick and John. Arthur considers that Lilith may be the lesser evil, but John argues that Everard is the true lesser evil. Between the unknown favors Lilith may be willing to bestow in return for the Blackstone, and the promises Cain has made, John argues that they should honor their deal with him. Arthur doubts Cain will make good on their deal and says he holds out some hope that there will be a secret third option. The party stops yet again, and Antoine relays a question from Alia. Did Arthur give back the talisman? But before Arthur has to muster an answer, Surveil hails him to say that he has one opportunity to tell the truth. Who was that woman, and what does she want?
It was just such a dense chapter. How long was it? It was like 15 minutes, right?
Yeah. 15 minutes, and it was like all talking and lore and like building. Yeah, it was a lot.
Wild time. It's very interesting how much happens in a chapter, and then listening to it all strung together is such a different experience when you know what chunks they were posted in. And I can't remember at this point what it was like to listen to it purely public. And I can't really forget about where we paused in the story. So I think that's such a valuable thing.
It's really impressive how well Harlan is able to string it together, because before I became a patron, there were very few episodes where I could tell where the chapters were, and there were very few times where I could tell where there was a vote or not. And so it was really impressive.
Yeah, in the chat, Autumn says, I like to try and pick out the choices while I was listening for the first time without the Patreon. And yeah, I did that too. When we first discovered that it was a like choose your own adventure style show and there were choices to be made and votes to be had, I remember being so confident that like pretty much every decision was a vote. I was like, oh yeah, like I'm sure that was a vote and that was a vote. But no, it's so much more calculated than that, and it's so much more regimented. So as a public only listener, not knowing what the votes are until after you listen to the episode, I would be interested in knowing what that experience is like, and then being able to come and hear people talk about the decisions, because I remember I didn't really have any contact with the fandom while I was binging it. I went through it so quickly, there was no opportunity for me to talk to anyone about it. Not that I would have anyway. I really don't like engaging with fandom in a broad sense until I catch up with whatever's going on. I remember being certain that things were choices that were definitely not choices. And I remember being shocked at what was a choice, which again,
Yeah.
like I keep finding myself saying, even as a patron, why are we deciding this? That makes me so anxious.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, there have been so many votes where I just have to sort of be like, I just want to know what happens next. Like I can't feel strongly about one side or the other because I just have to trust the process and whatever choice wins that it's going to be good. And it is. It always is.
Yeah. Autumn says sometimes it was way more obvious and others it was seamless. Yeah. To this day, there are still so many things that I forget were votes because when you re listen to the full episode, it just, even though I'm a patron, it just flows so well that if
Yeah.
I wasn't there for the vote, I probably don't remember exactly what was a vote unless it was like really iconic.
I'm really looking forward to listening to part 50 all together because it's going to be a wild ride, I feel like.
Yeah, there's been several chapters in the season this season in particular, where I was like, oh, that's going to be the choice. And then I look at the chapter and it's not even halfway over. And I'm like, oh, no, that's not the choice. So what is going to be the choice?
Yeah, yeah. And I noticed in poll chat people were feeling that way about wondering if we were going to have to decide whether to go with Lilith or go with Cain for who to give the Blackstone. People were afraid, and there was a moment where I was like, "Oh, are we going to make that choice right now? I don't think I'm ready."
I'm not prepared enough. Every choice has made sense. I don't think there's been a single vote in Malevolent where I'm like, well, why would you have us decide that in a bad way?
Yeah.
But I can't believe that they're like the consequences of our actions. It's so freaky to me. I know that
Yeah.
it can't possibly be world ending right now, but it feels like
know.
it is.
I don't know. I mean, this is the season where the end game is the end of the world, potentially. And I mean, Arthur and John are called the Die Zerai, like the Day of Wrath. So, I mean, in this season, yeah, I think the consequences of our choices could be world ending.
I hesitate to talk about this because I know that it makes people sad and everything. I'm going to be really brief about it. I will say, like, we know that season 6 is the final season, and now we kind of have heard from Harlan in a spooky stream, which is the kind of impromptu video game streams that Harlan and Joe do on Invictus sometimes, that it's going to be 60. 60 is probably the last episode of Malevolent, and if 52 is truly the last episode of season 5, there's been rumors for a very long time that season 6 is quote unquote the Dark World arc. And
Yeah.
I have no idea how the hell we're going to go from delivering a giant a Blackstone to where it needs to be to the Dark World. Like I can't, my brain doesn't go there. So I am so excited to see how the hell we're going to do this in such a short amount of episodes with such a long time in between, because I know it sounds like that's not very many, that's not very much time, but every
That's
week
like a
we get
year
a
of
chapter.
content. Yeah.
It's a year. Yeah. That's a
Yeah.
very long time for us. So if you're devouring this week by week, it's a long time. If you're binging this like 10 years from now, hi, it's 2025 and things are crazy. For us, it's going to be a while before we get a conclusion, but I have no idea how they're going to get there. And I'm excited to listen back to this episode and go, Queen, you silly goose. It was right in front of you the whole time.
Sweet summer child.
So about this chapter, really briefly, I know that this week we're going to have a little bit less to talk about in terms of the vote because it's not very divisive. Spoiler alert. We're all kind of in agreement. But what are some of your big hits for this chapter?
Well, first of all, another banger line from Mother Darkness. Spoils from a rotten tree, cage to a little tin god. Bars. Sick. I love that. And also, she mentions shortly, like right in kind of in the same breath, that Pestilence rides with the remaining horses towards this realm's day of wrath. And I know that there have been some rumors about the Four Horsemen being represented in the party, and so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I know that there have been a lot of different types of discussions going on about four horsemen of the apocalypse and things like that, and all kinds of dissecting parts of myth and fable and legend and biblical interpretations of things. I think that it's very interesting that we have been given so many different kinds of symbolism and metaphor. I mean, I know it didn't come really to pass. Maybe, I mean, there's still time, but hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. We have the four horsemen. We've had so many different, very common and well-known bits of, I would say, timeless and classic symbolism in season 5 that feels like you just get that vibe of we're coming to a close and everything is starting to come together. At the same time, I have never been more, I don't want to say confused because it's not confusion. I'm completely on board. I know what's going on. But I have never been more bewildered as to how we're at the end of a show rather than like the middle of a show.
Right. Well, yeah, it does feel like this is very much like man against the world, man against, impossible obstacles, and the themes of humanity really play into that. And I mean, I do feel like we're coming to like a really big climax, but I'm curious about, I assume that the climax of season 5 is going to lead into the climax of the end of the show, and I'm just really curious to see how the stakes keep getting higher,
Yeah, I agree. Ezra said, loved her rant and glad we're keeping her for a longer multi-episode villain. The hag was horrible, but a great character, and would have loved to have her around longer to be an enemy to John. And that's actually something that goes in line kind of with what I was saying, either last autopsy or the autopsy before that, which is that I am so ready for John to have more ties to the world that we have Arthur in. Like, just because Arthur is the mouthpiece for John at this point in time, we have so many connections with Arthur. We have like 1, maybe 2 connections with John, and Charlie, if you're out there, he's one of them and he's gone. Except I think maybe he could come back, but we'll talk about that during the vote, because I know you and we have talked about that a little bit in our shared notes doc about how Charlie can still win. So there's a little bit less to say for John in terms of like enemies he's made, quote unquote. And I love the idea of Mother Darkness being one of them. And I love that it's like a god, like Arthur has human enemies, and now John has like a deity as an enemy. And I really like that.
Well, and I think that it is fitting, considering he is a fragment of one of those outer gods.
Yes, yeah. The other thing that I want to talk about is actually the reaction that everybody had to the outcome of this vote. We picked to give her back the talisman, or to not to give her back the talisman, and the opposite. And I saw some mixed reactions. So most people felt like we did the right thing and that was the way to go. There was another side of the fan base that thought we screwed up, and people have different interpretations of what the result was. I think, first of all, everyone's opinion is valid, quote unquote. And I say quote unquote because I know that's become kind of cliche to say you're valid, but like I genuinely mean that no matter how you interpret it, whether you think we fucked up or not, I think that it makes sense. I can see it both ways, as I often can. That's why I love poll chat and debating and all of these choices, because I have a multifaceted point of view. On one hand, you have people saying it was really good of Arthur to stick to his guns and it matched the tone and the mood, and the outcome was exactly what we expected. You also have people saying that even if we had given it back, the way she reacted would have been basically the same. Then you have another group of people. We fucked up because she is a grieving mother and it was hard to sympathize with her, but maybe that was the point. Maybe that's the point, is to like, even though she's a terrible person, that makes it difficult to understand where she's coming from, difficult to sympathize with her. But that's kind of what we're trying to fight against. That's what the traditional good person thing is, to see where cruelty is suffering and to sympathize with that anyway. And it may be that this small gesture might have actually come back for us later on.
Maybe I should have considered some of my, like, kindness to hags and fairy tales that I was so adamant about speaking to her and not ignoring her.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see how arguments completely contradict each other if you string them all together and don't separate them by choice. Like,
Yeah.
be nice to the hag and don't ignore her, but also don't give her back her shit. That would
Right.
never have flown if you put those two things in the same discussion. But we're talking
Right.
about two completely different votes. And so your argument from last week is basically out the window. And this week it's a whole different ballgame. So
Yeah, I think it's Fish who likes to say, like, I'm Fish voting this week. I don't know that guy who voted last week.
yeah, basically a completely new person. The other thing that I think I wanted to touch on in your notes here, I know it's small, but it made me laugh. Surveil, and that's VALE, and then you put a dash and you put surveil, as in SURVEIL, and I kind of love that. I did not notice that.
Oh, and that is not me. I do not claim any. I'm not the origin of that notice, but somebody was red string theorying about how, you know, the connection between, like, surveil and surveilling, you know, he's watching us. I had to give a nod. I'm sorry I didn't write down who I saw talking about that on the, I think it was in, like, the shit post or something. So
I love it. It was fantastic.
and right below that, in my notes, I mentioned little chalk tippy tappies because when Alia is writing on her slate, you can hear the little chalk of her handwriting,
yeah.
and I loved that.
That's not even something I would have ever thought. Like, if I was making this episode, I like what I can't even imagine what goes through Harlan's head when he's choosing what sounds to put in, because I can't even think of a sound he left out. You know what I mean? Like, what else could you possibly add?
Yeah, he makes the world, like, so rich with little details like that, and, you know, I've been loving just the very natural background noise of the horses' hooves moving and things like that. It's all very cool.
Oh, Graham says that the surveil thing was Kara.
Shout out to Kara, very clever, very good.
Love you, Kara. Kara is one of the most awesome members. Just like side note, Kara does a lot of statistics for poll chat that I really love. She's keeping track of the activity in poll chat, and so sometimes she'll post about like what spikes activity, which options created like a lot of conversation, and if there's a pattern to what choices do over time. It's such a sad, like, bittersweet feeling to know that Kara has all of this documented, but there are so many years of Malevolent that would have been so cool to find a trend and pick on it.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
won't have very much of that going forward to rely on, but I'm very happy to be part of the statistics for now.
Yeah.
I want to mention that we learned so much more about Aaliyah than I ever thought we would.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there was a big old lore drop. That was so cool, and so many new words, and I did a little bit of research on my own, and I also sort of like skimmed around on the Invictus server where all the Patreon channels are, and it turns out that the Seraph and the Ardor and even the Vanguard are not in like the Call of Cthulhu system. Those are all Harlan originals.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
But that also means that, like, you know, I was hoping that the lore masters would be like, oh yeah, that means it's this, and here's some more information. But unfortunately, in this situation, there's no books to read.
I love that though. That means we're all on the same level. Nobody knows more than me, damn it. For once, I'm not the only one going, I don't know what the fuck that is.
Yeah. So that's really exciting, and you know, some people have already started kind of theorizing about connections, because like you wrote that the Seraphs might have some connection to like Seraphim. Someone said something about how the seraphim, or maybe the seraphs, are the burning ones, and ardor also has a definition about like burning passion, something.
Well, when I think of ardor, I originally was thinking of larder, which has nothing to do with anything.
Not the same thing.
No. Then I was thinking of arduous, which is like laborious or very painstaking. And then I thought of like amorous. And so I started riffing off of the origins of words and things. I didn't get anywhere with that, which is why I didn't write it down.
Well, the other definition of ardor is very intimate passion. And I didn't write that down in my notes, but when you said amorous, yeah, it actually could be somewhat connected. Hydrus in the chat is shouting, "Who is her vanguard?" And yeah, I'm so curious about who Aaliyah's vanguard is. Like, what are they like?
Can we all have vanguards? That sounds fucking cool. Like the way you put it. Who's her vanguard? Like, I want a vanguard now.
Well, and the thing that is like stuck in my mind is Arthur asks Yorick who the vanguard serves, and Yorick doesn't answer. And I'm like, what? What does it mean? What does it mean? I need to know more.
Yeah, Yorick just gets more and more fucking weird every chapter. Everyone has always talked about, oh, do you trust him? Do you not trust him? Oh, he never did anything wrong in his life, all that stuff. I just want to study him. Like, I don't understand. I don't know if I trust him, if I don't trust him. Trust doesn't really factor into it. I just want to know what the fuck his deal is.
Well, and Seer says he can't answer. He wants to. And yeah, when that was when he said that he does not have the means to explain how the title Daizerai has been bestowed upon them. And what? Does not have the means to explain how.
For me, I know for you it was a different word, but for me, the word in that phrase is means. What do you mean you don't have the means to explain?
Does that mean that like you can't, like, there are no words to explain it?
I really have a feeling it's like, he's been broadly contracted to not say anything. He has a real tight NDA, but
right.
But that he would if he could. It's just that he hasn't found a loophole yet.
Rose said too much bandwidth. Yeah, he doesn't have enough bandwidth for it. Yeah, and the word that stuck out in that phrase for me was how. Because I had first transcribed it wrong and written, I do not have the means to explain why this title has been bestowed upon you. But then when I listened to it again, he says he doesn't have the means to explain how this title has been bestowed upon them. Which, there's a nuance there, there's a difference. And I don't know what it means. Like, I've connected two dots, but I haven't connected shit.
I wonder if very specifically, I'm trying to think about all of the things that I've latched onto with Yorick, because it's not very much. I don't remember shit. We all know this. But again, I'm still so hung up on Yorick and John having some kind of long-lasting, deep throwback relationship. And how that connects to this moment, because I feel like it does. I feel like there's something going on. Maybe it's like another timeline, John. Maybe.
I don't know. Because I think it has to do with John's time in the Dark World in some way, because, well, it was so confusing because Yorick didn't know what a seraph was. Yorick and John both knew what an ardor was, and John says he remembers that. And Arthur's tone of voice when he asks, like, why do you remember that?
Oh my God. I specifically grabbed that quote from the transcript because I was like dying. It's one of the parts of the chapter where I like lean in so close to my screen as though that's going to help me get into the narrative myself. And he says, yes, the Vanguard, I remember, and ardor is the human connection that the Vanguard has in this world, like the head Kellen had in the water. The Vanguard is the Dark World counterpart. And then he trails off, and the way Arthur says, how do you remember that, makes it almost sound like Arthur is feeling some kind of sinking dread.
Yes,
and
yes.
like dread mixed with betrayal mixed with anxiety about like it's generally never a good fucking time when John starts remembering anything. I start to dread. I'm so excited anytime John says that something's familiar or he kind of remembers that or something like that. I get so excited, but I also get so worried because that
Yeah.
means some shit's gonna go wrong.
Yeah. And what? We haven't had a real divorce since like the beginning of the season when it was the fallout from John not telling Arthur about his deal with Cain and being in the dark world and all of that. But it's been a divorce light season.
Yeah, well, because I don't I don't think they're gonna have more divorces. I
Right.
feel like season 4 was the closing of the chapter of John and Arthur divorcing. They've been through
Yeah.
way too much to start doing all of that again. I think
Yeah.
even season 4, even though there were divorces, which by the way, I did not realize people were calling them divorces until way too late in my fandom journey. I think that's hilarious because I mean, I didn't call them anything. I just said fights.
Yeah.
But I think even season 4, if you're really paying attention, they don't actually quote unquote divorce that often. They have a lot of really good talks,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't say there were any divorces the same way there were in 1 and 2 and even 3.
Yeah. My theory is that if they do have another divorce, it's going to be about like a disagreement about what the best path forward is and whether to work with Lilith or work with Cain or do some secret third thing.
I was going to say the exchange in this chapter right next to how do you remember that got me the most hype was John, well, it doesn't matter. We're not going to give her the stone to her either way. No? What if she's the lesser evil? The lesser evil? Between herself and Cain? Arthur, Everard is the lesser evil. We're not giving it to Cain because we want to. We are betraying these people because if we don't, Cain will kill everything we love and care for. Right. If there's a choice in the matter, if there is a way not to give the stone to Cain, then we should be fighting to keep it with Everard, not giving it to Cain's fucking daughter. No, you're right. Especially with no reason to. That was me, like, I feel like physicality wise, if this was an episode of Friends, John would be like strolling around the living room, kind of being like, Arthur, bro, dude, what the fuck are you thinking? What's God with you, man? Are you okay, bro? Because like it concerns me so much that Arthur was like, oh, maybe we should give the stone to Lilith instead of Cain. Like, dude, have you forgotten what's going on? Who are you?
Yeah.
What's happening?
I think Arthur is in such a precarious position between hopelessness and hopefulness because he says in this exchange like he doesn't expect Cain to fulfill his end of the bargain and give them everything he promised, but at the same time he says that he holds out some hope that they will have a chance to change their trajectory. And it's very interesting. It's very interesting.
Yeah, and I'm shocked that, I mean, first of all, we've all been on the same page Cain not actually fulfilling his end of the bargain. We all know that's not going to happen. Even Arthur knows that's not going to happen.
Right.
However, I've been saying since the start of season 5, I mean, from day 1, you can go back in poll chat and search my name and find it. I was like, dude, number 1 goal for me, if I were Arthur, if I were playing this game, is to get the Blackstone to Cain. I don't care how bad that is. I don't care what the stakes are around that. Right this second, I would do anything to not have to watch my daughter be tortured over and over again.
Yeah,
and like,
absolutely.
There's no way that there's any other motivation. And so for Arthur to suddenly be like, oh yeah, well, I guess we could give it to Lilith if the things don't work out with Cain. I was like, my jaw dropped. I was like,
yeah,
you've clearly been through so much that something has shifted in your mindset. I want to peel you open and figure out what you are talking about, my dude.
He's already been peeled open this season. Give him a break. Stop peeling that man open.
I think that it's so interesting because we know that, for example, we're talking about giving the Blackstone to Cain Lilith, Everard. And one of those things is not like the other.
Yeah,
Everard
absolutely.
is not a deity. Everard, as far as we know, is not a fucking god. So obviously, that's kind of a wild thing for John to suggest that would actually work out. But then again, like Everard knows a lot more than we do about what's going on in terms of how to deal with some of these entities. It sounds like he has way more knowledge about protection and the arcane even than
Yeah.
than Arthur does. So I can see where John came up with that. Like, if we're going to give the stone to anybody, it would be Everard.
Yeah, and I think that he's talking about factions to a certain degree, And as far as the faction that doesn't want to either torture Arthur's daughter in a million different ways for all time forever or end the fucking world, yeah, Everard would be sort of the good guys. And I don't know, Cain and Lilith are two flavors of bad guys, but, yeah. However, yes, I think it is kind of, I guess, foolish in a way to think that Everard would be able to actually hold on to the Blackstone or secure it enough. Although I guess if Cain can't see it and Everard hides it super well, it's just going to be a longer game of hide and seek.
So Fish said, Arthur said he's holding out hope that they can alter the course of what Cain has demanded of them. Cain's basically acting like fate here, and some elements of this season seem quite literally foretold. Yorick, I still believe, is capable of seeing into the future to some degree. There's a whole prophetic element to this journey, it seems like. And John tells him that he shouldn't hold out on hope for that. He reiterates that their plan is to betray these people and give Cain the stone. He shuts down the idea that Lilith could possibly be a lesser evil here. I wonder if this is because of John's experience with Cain in the Dark World, but I also think it makes perfect sense for his character, too, just in general. I don't think it's a matter of Arthur not being scared of the stick. He painfully understands what's at stake if they fuck this up, and I feel like he would do anything to prevent that. But he's also thinking bigger picture here, about what it could mean if Cain ends up with the Blackstone in the end, and the consequences it could have across all worlds, while John is just laser focused on the two of them and blocking out everything else. Yeah, I agree with that, Fish. I do think that John's perspective is much more narrow than Arthur's, and I can see how Arthur might prioritize the bigger picture. For example, it's pretty much Trolley
Yeah.
Problem, where John is like, no, I don't care how many other people are going to die. The people I love are on this track, and I'm going to save them. Versus Arthur, who's like, yeah, the people I love will die, and, I'm going to be miserable forever, but at least there's a chance for every other world kind of thing. And I
Yeah,
think
that's
there's
true.
no right answer to that.
Yeah. No, I mean Arthur is just a character who is always he's gotten used to being sort of the scapegoat or the person to blame, or he's gotten used to actually being the person to blame for so much tragedy in his life. And so I think there is a certain amount of that sort of some of that self-loathing still exists. And yeah, I think that he would rather I think that he would rather like sacrifice himself in the face of like saving other people.
I think John is also thinking very literally in the same, maybe it's just what I want to think, because John is, I want to think that my perspective isn't the only, like, I'm not the only person who has this perspective. But to me, I think John actually thinks that Cain's going to follow up on his promise. I think John might believe that it's going to be as simple as Cain gets his stone and gets to do whatever crazy shit that doesn't affect him and Arthur. Like, I don't think
Right.
John understands the stakes. I
Yeah.
think he
Yeah.
really is thinking small time in terms of what's been laid out for them, where Arthur
Yeah.
knows that Cain has designs that he has not talked about and that they will not know about for a long time.
Right.
They
Yeah.
may never know about. And so Arthur's like, I'm pretty sure this dude is going to end the world, several worlds, whatever. Whereas John's like, but he hasn't said that he's going to do that. So I'm not worried about it.
Right.
Very different approaches to a problem. We should probably
we,
talk about the poll.
Yeah. Well, importantly, because I have the strongest argument for telling the truth. which is that the last time Arthur told a big truth, it was telling Charlie about John, and this is how Charlie can still win, and so we should tell the truth here.
Yes, absolutely. You're totally right. The last time that Arthur had to tell the truth was about John's name, and it was to Charlie, and everything worked out great. And so that is like the number one reason why we should be voting truth, because truth leads to Charlie. Truth leads to Charlie. What would Charlie do?
But seriously, what are the poll numbers right now? Because this is almost a crit. It's almost a crit.
Yes. Okay. So the poll for this week was truth versus lie. And right now the poll stands at 359 votes. Nope, sorry, 360 votes. I just refreshed. The last chapter was the first time we broke 400 votes during a live chapter voting. So that's very exciting. So we have 360 votes out of about 400, probably a few more than that. And the ratio is currently 98% truth versus 3% lie. And to call some specific folks out, that is 351 votes for truth and 9 specific people for lie.
Very funny. Very funny. I did see at least one person, I think it was actually like one of the only people who posted in Slow Poll this week, who had a reasoning for lie, and that was Key Raven. So Key Raven said, Surveil had specifically asked for who Mother Darkness is and what she wants. We can't tell half-truths here. We either tell the whole truth or none of it. Therefore, telling the truth will involve, at minimum, the following disclosures. The old woman is Mother Darkness, a powerful evil entity. She wants to kill me. Arthur would probably also give her the reason, i.e. killed her daughter. She also wanted her talisman back, and I didn't give it to her. Obviously, there's a huge hole in this story. If Mother Darkness wanted to kill Arthur, why didn't she? Obviously, the truth isn't going to endear Arthur to Vale. Since Boothjohn said revealing Lilith is only possible, I assume Arthur will try to lie about Lilith's protection. But like Boothjohn said, Vale is no fool. He knows the lands and the evils within it very well. He might have heard of Mother Darkness. Knowing her power, he will probably be suspicious if he knows that Mother Darkness is letting him be. We could avoid all the icky question about Lilith if we just lie. Arthur is honestly a pretty good liar most of the time. He just rolls critical failures occasionally. If we could convince Surveil that Mother Darkness was a being of lesser power, and that we simply were able to scare her off with threats or with the talisman, then we can avoid questions about Lilith. Alia certainly knows about Mother Darkness, but with her skills, she probably already knows Arthur's other secrets, like the existence of John. However, she hasn't shared that information with the class. It's clear Alia has some motive of her own, and I don't think she would tell the party, at least not yet. I was interested to hear someone argue for lie, even if most of us agree that at the end of the day, we think that truth is probably the better option for a number of reasons. But yeah, good job, Key Raven. That's a good argument for lie.
Key Raven is such a delight to debate with in poll chat, and I just want to shout out Key Raven for being an excellent listener. I think it's really good. It's really nice to have somebody who listens to arguments, breaks them down, responds to them, and can still be chill in the process. Everyone in poll chat is great, but Key Raven is particularly new, and I have loved participating in debate with all of our new friends. But I know that in Truth versus Lie, I think this is one of those not easy votes, but like a vote that you could probably predict the majority would pick truth, just based on the fact that the way we've voted in the past for things. I know that you compiled a little list here from the wiki, right, Vol, about different votes that we've done that have maybe lined up a little bit.
I went through season 5 and I looked for all of the votes in which there was a clear majority, 80% or higher. I retaught myself how to do percentages for this and then realized that all of the percentages were already on the wiki. I just scrolled past them. So shout out to the wiki team for being amazing and getting all those percentages and the numbers of individual votes and stuff. Very cool. The very first vote in season 5 was the vote to react to the noise in the rafters at the windmill passively or aggressively, and 95% of the voters decided to be passive for the first vote. Or maybe it was, it was the first vote of season 5, which looking back is like kind of crazy that we were like, yeah, let's go passively into this new world where we are completely on our ass, like completely out of our element. But that was 209 for passive versus 11 for aggressive.
Yeah, Ink says, what if you react passive aggressively? And like that would be my first option. Be like, God, some windmill we have here, I guess.
One of the other votes that this reminds me of is the way that we have been voting in regards to our deal with Yorick. So in episode 44, chapter 219, the question was to honor the deal with Yorick or deny the request. And we didn't know what Yorick wanted yet, I don't think. It was just a question of whether or not we honor the deal or deny it.
This was him saying that he wanted to make alterations to the hand, I think.
Yeah. That had a 93% majority. That was 268 votes for honor the deal versus 20 votes for deny the request. So we've been sort of like cultivating...
We've been kind of reacting like a goody two-shoes.
We've been cultivating some honor.
Yeah, and then we're like, no, but you can't have your talisman back, sorry. I draw the line at sharing my shiny trinkets that I stole.
The other votes that were obviously going to be very high majorities for one versus the other were all of the votes in episode 43, The Witch, that had to do with John's conversation with the witch and how he reacted to it. But I did find it was funny. So this one is in the low 80 percentile, but in chapter 212, we had the option to give up the talisman or hold out longer.
Motherfucker.
And 81% was the majority to hold out longer from giving her the talisman. That was 221 votes versus 52 people who voted to give up the talisman at that stage.
I just, for some reason, I feel like our fealty to this talisman is stronger than anything else. I will be so frustrated if voters are like, suddenly we're fine with giving up the talisman for any other literal reason. At this point, you have to look me in the eyes and sit with this talisman if it eats Arthur's face off. We have, like, attached ourselves to this shiny trinket so hard. And I wonder if Harlan knew. I wonder if he had any idea how bad we love this little object.
I don't even think that it's like a love for the object. I think that, honestly, the ways in which we have reacted to the talisman as voters has been very much due to the frame of the scene around it. That's my personal opinion, anyways.
I can kind of see how you would choose to lie. I think that it would be kind of crazy because it implies that we think we could get away with it. And that is the main reason why I wouldn't vote lie. It really doesn't have anything to do with wanting to, like, be truthful or think that it's going to help us in any way. In fact, I think it could get us ditched right now or killed.
Yeah. Square Becca said in poll chat, yes, I think trying to pull one over the nigh omniscient woman is a bad idea. And that about covers it. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't pull the wool over her eyes. I think that's a great note to go out on. What a good chapter and a great joke. You know who would have liked that joke, Paul?
Who would have liked that joke?
I feel like Charlie would have liked that joke.
Yeah, I think he probably likes corny jokes, like deep down. He's got a soft spot for it.
Thank you so much, Vol, for hanging out with me, and I appreciate all your beautiful contributions. You are very loved.
It's wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me, and thank everybody in chat for coming and hanging out.
Thank you, of course, to Harlan Guthrie, the sole creator of Malevolent. You can find everything official at linktree/Harlan Guthrie. Without his labor of love for a story he wants to tell, we wouldn't be here. And speaking of here, if you want to be a part of the live vote chat I record each week, join the Invictus Patreon and connect your Discord account. We have our own private patrons-only autopsy channel. If you want to chat with me and maybe even some other folks you hear from on the show, you can also find a public autopsy channel in the Invictus Discord so you can hang out even if you're not a patron. While Malevolent Autopsy is my pride and joy, it wouldn't be ever improving without some key players. Thank you to Mizra, Nikki, and Vol Control for their work editing and assisting with production. They do so much for the show, and they do it all as volunteers, and I couldn't be more grateful. To submit a voice recording, have your message read aloud on the show, or find us on other platforms, visit linktree/Malevolent Autopsy. Now, let's hear from one more Malevolent fan before we finish this week.
Hello there, this is Luna Maria. You can just call me Luna. I use she, they pronouns. I'm recording a little note just about what Malevolent has taught me and what it means to me. Sort of aligned with my favorite quote. I haven't always loved horror. I only started loving horror as I got a little bit older, and I went through some really difficult times in my early 20s that, were very lonely and very tough. And at that time, horror started to become really comforting because there was something so cathartic about watching characters endure struggles similar in the way that you were, and finding means to overcome them, or finding glimmers of hope amongst what are otherwise bleak situations. But I think the thing about Malevolent that has stood out the most to me is just how constantly difficult so many of the scenarios are, and how dark it can get in terms of, like, these are two main characters who've done some of the worst things imaginable. I mean, what a concept for a protagonist. Killed his own baby and another one tortured people for millennia, and we care so much about them. And to me, I love that because it's so antithetical to kind of like Protestant Christianism of, like, you're either a good person or a bad person. It's like you are a constantly evolving person. That just goes with Malevolent's theme of, like, every moment can have a meaning, and the temporary and the change and transformation is some of the most important pieces of being alive. And there's so much to us behind more than where we started or what we've done or who we were. So I've rambled about how beautiful Malevolent is. I love the show with all my heart. Bye.
I'm your host, Queen, and I'll see you next week. The horrors persist, but so do we.